A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. This being a Friday, we review the major events of the week. We will be looking at the state of affairs in the political parties. Well, we have a situation in the National Unity Platform Party. We've heard in the recent past that there were conflicts linked to its mobilization strategy, known as MPUUGA. And one of the leaders who was complaining about this was the fact that a team of mobilizers was going around in constituencies of elected leaders without actually involving them in their activities. And one of the people who was complaining about this was Honorable Matthias MPUUGA, who was the leader of opposition in parliament and also deputy president of this political party. Well, the situation has rapidly changed since we had what they call the parliamentary exhibition campaign, where documents were leaked suggesting that Honorable MPUUGA received 500 million shillings as a token of appreciation for work well done in Parliament. Well, Honorable MPUUGA has reacted today, saying he will not be resigning as the political party has demanded. That is from the position of Commission of Parliament. He actually says there's a clique within NUP that has been working towards maligning him and spoiling his name. He says he will not cow down, and he says he is prepared for the worst, and if it takes this sacrifice to return sanity and common sense to politics, he's ready to actually stand out. He says there's a small group of family interests being peddled in the party, and they do not mind about how the party is being managed without transparency. We'll be discussing this, and we'll be asking, will NUP actually survive this wave? The party leader, Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, has maintained: 1, MPUUGA must return the money where he got it from; 2, he must apologize to the public; and 3, he must resign from the parliamentary commission, and then he will be rehabilitated to his leadership position in the party. We'll be discussing that. Now, this week, we also saw a development within the NRM party. Well, it launched officially its implementation of the 2026 roadmap, and one of the things they're doing is to update their register, and this time they are going digital. They'll be including national ID numbers for all its members, and one of the things that we learned is that the party now has 11.4 million registered members. Well, some people have been looking at that number and saying, hey, what does this mean for the elections? Well, President Yoweri Museveni, who is also the party chairman, launched this campaign, and he warned the party against bad conduct, including mismanaging this process, and he said those involved will be charged with fraud. But he also warned them to guard against infiltration from the opposition. Apparently, some members of the opposition are planning to join the NRM to confuse the party during its primaries. Well, the NRM register has been one of the issues, and we have seen the challenges that emerged in the primaries, and we'll be asking a question: will we see more peaceful primaries, given the stance that is being taken with the register? This week also, another political formation, they are calling themselves the Holy Alliance. This is a group that comprises of the Justice Forum Party, JEMA, the Conservative Party, the Uganda People's Congress, the National Economic Empowerment Dialogue Party, and the splinter group of the Democratic Party, which is under Samuel Lubega Mkaku, who is a former presidential candidate. Well, they have decided to move out of the larger forces of change, that formation there, which is spearheaded by the Katonga FDC camp. They say their mission now is to prepare Uganda for the post-Museveni era. They want to avoid a situation where the country will disintegrate in case President Yoweri Museveni chooses to depart. But they are not telling us when they actually think he will depart. So we'll be asking, is this alliance useful, looking at the political landscape? Time allowing, we will look at the Lubowa Super Specialized Hospital project. It is back in the news because opposition MPs who went to the site to do an oversight role on this project were shut out. There was a debate in Parliament and a number of issues were raised, and there's a suggestion that no further funding should be provided to this project until Parliament is well abreast with what is going on. So those are the issues we'll be reflecting on. I have a panel of 4. Ms. Perry Aritua, Executive Director at Women Democracy Network, Uganda Chapter. lawyer and pundit on governance and human rights matters. It's always a pleasure to have you on Spectrum Extra, Ms. Perry Aritua.
Thank you, Kenneth. Good evening, viewers and listeners, and my fellow panelists.
Today we have what they call parity in the women movements. Let me introduce Dr. Sarah Birete, Executive Director at the Center for Constitutional Governance. She's a pundit on human rights and governance issues. I hope today they are going to praise us for actually having this parity. Sometimes when we have
the norm, actually.
Sometimes when we have only male panelists, we are told, look at that. Manos. Welcome to Spectrum Extra, Dr. Sarah Birete.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers and listeners. Glad to be back on Spectrum Extra.
Honorable Stephen Mukitale Birawa, economist, political scientist, immediate former Blissa County MP, proponent of national dialogue. Good evening, Honorable. Thank you very much for making time to be with us on Spectrum Extra today.
Thank you, Kenneth. Radio 1 Spectrum viewers and listeners, fellow panelists, we are increasingly getting concerned about what we can call almost a stagflation, because whereas there seem to be scarcity of money, the cost of living is going high. The dollar is also increasingly becoming expensive. So we really need to be careful, because we have yesterday you had a very good debate on the role of the diaspora. The diaspora has been a very good hedge for us in terms of the remittances they make here, but also our neighbors, more so DRC and the South Sudan. So I think we need to seriously start looking at that. Much as I hear there's a lot of money being scattered, not in the public goods, but for those who want it for themselves.
Mr. Joseph Ochieno, member of the Uganda People's Congress, Pan-Africanist, pundit on global governance and development matters. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
It's a pleasure to be here. I must welcome the parity. I noticed that on arrival. It's a delight. We may talk about it as a joke, but it's something that I personally take very seriously. But of course, what else can we do but to campaign? I must say, I'm just coming from Makerere University, where I met a couple of young students. But amid that, part of the conversation is this thing about equality in this country, and it must also include gender equality. And since you introduced me as somebody who's an activist in these areas, I go through studios both local and abroad. No, I think we need to nurture young people, and we need to put sufficient effort in nurturing young female leaders. So it's a pleasure to be here. But on that, I'd rather get scared if from Blissa, where there is a whole Mr. Museveni's oil, is where we are hearing about the campaigns and complaints about cost of living. What about my poor Bukedi, which is on record the poorest after 38 years of NRA?
Joseph, that oil is a national resource, and the more you continue talking about it as 70s oil, it might end up in that direction. So let's embrace it as a national resource. But anyway, this is Women Month. Today is First March, and you know, Women's Month, we dedicate a lot of things to discuss issues to do with gender parity, and we will ensure we'll do our best here at Radio 1 to actually uphold that. And why not start with a woman, Dr. Sarah Birete? We are looking at so many things happening on the political front. We have a situation in NUP, we have a development in NRM, but we also have something called the Holy Alliance that also came up this particular week. Let's hear your views, first of all, on this set of issues.
Well, maybe as a part of the preamble, is just to remind viewers that democracy thrives on 4 key parameters. One is active citizenry, and that involves citizens' participation in governance. For our Constitution, it's provided for under Article 38 of the Constitution, which provides that citizens can engage in their governance through either political or civic organizations. The second key element is a rule of law, and we are also coming from a situation where the legal fraternity is dealing with matters to do with the independence of the judiciary. The third key element is independent and efficient institutions. So as we discuss this crisis, we are also looking at the functionality or dysfunctionality of Parliament as a temple of democracy. because that is the arena where citizens' views, wishes, and aspirations are amplified and implemented. And the fourth key element is the checks and balances. Basically, in our case, we have the doctrine of separation of powers, and many people have been saying it's neither here or there. So we have that as a guide for democracy being for the people, about the people, and by the people. So when it comes to the key events of the week, we have news not so good from most of the political parties. We have the NRM struggling, the failure of SEC to take a decision on Perao and whether Perao is a part of NRM or not. And for me, that demonstrated the dysfunctionality of organs of NRM. Parties thrive on about 4 issues as well: ideology, principles and values, structures, and the social base, which is the membership. So when you have the structures of NRM, or any party for that matter, failing to take important decisions of the day, the president summoned SEC, according to media reports, to deal with the issue of the Patriotic League of Uganda. SEC sat and deferred the same matter to the chairman who had summoned them with that agenda. That shows that the NRM party, if we remove the state structures and support, maybe it would be the worst party. Because these are the days when NRM party would be shining. They have a merger with state institutions that supports them to take advantage over the others. They have advantage of resources, both legal and illegal. Legally, they take the biggest chunk of funding that comes through Electoral Commission, through their numerical strength. But we know that they also indirectly encroach on other state resources.
We do not know that.
I know that.
We do not have facts here on the table.
You don't have.
That. Yes.
But that's why I said the legal and the illegal. At least the legal, they take the biggest chunk of state resources for party funding. So that gives them an advantage over the other parties. They should be more organized. They should act better. When we go for elections, where I act on the observer side, you see the partisan leaning of security agencies to aid the NRM. And that is state capture. The army acts as a military wing of a party instead of a national army. That also gives them an unfair advantage over the others, which also distorts our democracy. But they have this advantage that they made use of. When you look at the issue of the register, I saw some social media reports insinuating that SEC members might not attend, but at least I saw Captain Mike Mukora in a very colorful shirt after him having launched the Perao. And I hope other members of SEC attended. So the NRM Constitution provides that members are not free to fraternize with other associations or agencies that would seemingly compete or contradict the agenda of NRM. What I would have expected from SEC was a decision similar to maybe ANC, or tending to that line, where ANC has taken steps to discipline their former president, who is a party big wing, for fraternizing with a competing party. This is what multi-party politics is about. Suspend, warn, suspend, expel if they don't abide by the Constitution. So you have NRM failing to enforce its Constitution for the members who fraternize with MK and the PRU associations. When you come to the events now happening in NUP, they are riding on accusations and counter-accusations and communications, which are then said they are not communications. In my view, NUP needs to sit down, take time to process issues, not pray to the gallery, If they need a committee to investigate a few issues, do so and come up with a clear and well-informed decision on its membership. Also, in the process of implementing values and principles of a party, at least it should be perceived that there is uniform application of the law, of the principles, of values, and not selective. Those have been the key events of the week, including, of course, Ulboa Hospital, but let me stop at the parties.
All right, let's hear from Perry. Your take. Dr. Sarah Birete has spoken broadly, but I would like us to focus a bit. Let's begin looking at inside the NUP, where we have had this situation where the deputy president and the party seem to be at the loggerheads. That's the Honorable Matthias MPUUGA. Are they managing this matter well? Is there any reason for the party to be concerned or to take the to take a tough decision that they made last evening?
Thank you, Kenneth. One is, I know that NUP has a code of conduct for its members and its leaders. So I am hoping that the code of conduct was used in this process. But
you know for a fact that they have it?
Yes.
Okay.
I know. They have a code of conduct. So I'm hoping it was used in this process. And one of the key things is the element of natural justice. That is very key for when you're dealing with conflict. But that aside, I wanted to focus on what may have led to this impasse that we find ourselves in as a country. One, Uganda doesn't, within our constitution, we don't have a salaries and remuneration commission. We don't. Now, Kenya realized that it was important. So when they were reviewing their constitution, they included an article in their constitution which provides for this commission. And what that commission does is to set salary scales for all public officers, including members of parliament. Now, that deals with the issues of inequality that we grapple with, where a teacher is earning 500,000 and a member of parliament is earning 35 million, with that is excluding these other allowances and benefits. So for me, I think one of the things Uganda needs to do is, as we talk about constitutional review, we must include a salaries and remuneration commission to deal with this issue. Secondly, I don't have many of the facts in terms of where this money came from, whether it went through the processes of, approval before it landed allegedly to Honorable
We are
MPUUGA.
talking about politics, but you bring in the issue of the salary review commission. And somebody else there is wondering, how do they connect?
You see, when you have a salaries and remuneration review commission, you deal with some of these things that we have been grappling in terms of the amount of money that is accessible to members of parliament. Because remember, they determine a lot of their salaries, they determine their allowances. Now, this is part of the problem. Because if you had a commission which says this is what they will earn, just like in Kenya, even this money we're talking about would have had to go through that process, And it's public information. In fact, if you Googled right now, it will tell you how much a leader of opposition in Kenya earns, how much the MPs earn, and their allowances. Now, that deals with the problem. Because for me, it seems like we're putting the cart before the horse. Because if we had a clear process, then even this 500 million would not have been up for discussion, because it would have been approved by a more transparent process. But because we don't have that, we are now dealing with this issue. And it's not only the 500 million. The money that MPs earn is obscene compared to what the public servants
you
earn.
talk about a process.
Yes.
From what we have seen, the documents that have been exhibited, let's for once take that they are factual. There are minutes of parliamentary commission, which is a process through which parliament makes certain decisions. So there was a meeting of the parliamentary commission, and the decision was taken that as the leader of opposition leaves office, he will be given 500 million shillings, and commissioners of parliament will also receive 400 million shillings. There are commissioners within that parliamentary commission who were also supposed to leave at the end of the 2.5 years. Some of them belong to the NRM, only that the NRM party made a decision to retain them.
Okay.
So is that not a legitimate?
No, as long as it were, because if that's what the rules say, and you see, that's why I will speak from a legal perspective. You don't interpret rules as you think they should have been. You interpret them as they are. If the rules are saying this is what will happen, that is it. Until you change it, you cannot now say, we wished it was different. That's not how it works. So that's why I'm focusing on regulation of the salaries of members of parliament, so that we deal with this issue once and for all. Their remuneration and all these things should be dealt with a commission, so that we have a semblance of equality in this conversation. But when it comes to conflict resolution within political parties, there must be processes, there must be systems, and that's why I'm saying they have a code of conduct. Did they follow the processes, you know, to reach that decision? Did they have, you know, and you see, usually for conflict like this, it is even better to bring an outsider whose tempers may not be as high, who may be a bit removed from the interests, but focuses on the issue. So if they went through the processes within the party, including the regulations that they have, their code of conduct, disciplinary and all that, and arrived at a decision, then that is their call. But the problem will not have been dealt with, because the next leader of opposition will still find this problem there, and they will still get the backlash, because the ordinary Ugandan is going through hell. The issue of inequality in terms of the salaries that our public servants earn. The teacher is earning, you know, basic, many of them earn like 500,000. They have the same needs like the member of parliament. So for me, we must even focus on the bigger issues, because this is just what I would call a tip of the iceberg.
All right.
People are grappling with a lot of problems.
So looking at all that issue, what would be your position on the decision the NUP party has taken, that one, MPUUGA refunds the money from where it came from? You said NUP has a code of conduct.
Exactly.
Then they're saying, two, he must apologize publicly. And then they're saying he should resign from the Parliamentary Commission. I'm
saying if they went through the processes, internal processes, using the regulations, afforded him an opportunity of natural justice, it's within their call, because every political party has its rules, you know. But the bigger question is not even that decision-making process in the party. It is the fact that 500 million shillings is going to an individual, because we have gaps in our legislation. Our constitution does not provide for salaries and remuneration commission, and yet this issue, in fact today Makerere was having a meeting where lecturers, especially those who the lecturers were saying they are earning less than their counterparts in public universities, and yet they are doing the same work. So it is a bigger issue than this. This is a tip of the iceberg, and for me it gives us an opportunity as a country that if we are talking about constitutional review, that must be one of the things we include in our constitution, so that it's transparent. We know that money is not being wasted. We know that there's equality in terms of how salaries are given out, and that there's a process. We are not saying that the teacher must earn as much as the MP, but we are saying there must be a semblance of equality in terms of looking at the living conditions and ensuring that they are commensurate with the amount of money that these different public servants earn.
Well, Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. We want to go for a break now. When we return, we'll hear from the Honorable Stephen Mkitali-Wirawa, but also Mr. Joseph Ochieno, before we go back to Dr. Sarah Bilete, because we want to understand where this situation leaves the NUP party with this kind of clash. We know very well Honorable MPUUGA is the deputy president in charge of Central Region, where this party has a strong base, and some people are already speculating that they are likely to head for a split, and when this happens, the party will make losses at the next election. Stay tuned. Radio 1 FM 90 will continue after this break.
Suvi is coming back fresh.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, a review of the major events of the week. Be part of this show by sharing with us your views using the WhatsApp line, which is 0703 090 090. My name is Kenneth Lukagandason, your host. And as we review the major events of the week, I'm speaking to Ms. Perry Aritua, Executive Director, Women Democracy Network, Dr. Sarah Birete, Executive Director at the Center for Constitutional Governance, the Honorable Stephen Mutalabirawa, Economist, Political Scientist, immediate former Blissa County MP. Now, coming on the mic is Mr. Joseph Ocheno, member of the Uganda People's Congress. Joseph, your views on this issue of NUP and where this conflict actually is heading?
You're confining me to NUP
at the moment.
But
I think you will have an opportunity to comment on the other.
Indeed, that's important because Perry brought in this in the context of the public service. I was actually quite surprised, and I am still quite surprised because I thought Perry and Sarah would possibly update us on this. If it is the case that we do not have a public service provision, a commission as such, meaning standards for PEM in public services.
Well, the UPC didn't leave us with any.
Oh, no, we did. No, we did. Do you know what? The Minister for Public Service and Cabinet Affairs in the UPC2 was Wilson Okwenje, the man who possibly made the biggest error on earth by recruiting Mr. Museveni as a researcher in President's office. And so we did. I am telling you that this conversation from the start, again, I want to emphasize from Perry's point of view, you ask, if we've been having a government for 38 years and we're squabbling over whether or not people should have parity at pay, it's atrocious. I don't really think possibly that the issue. The issue here, though, is that when I first saw the leaked, allegedly the minutes of the committee that assigned
Parliamentary
Commission that assigned these monies, the attachment included the NUP statement, and I was going to come to your program to praise NUP that the decision for them to have a formal meeting as a party, if you don't know anything else, and the manner in which they issued their statement. In fact, their statement is quite thorough. I was actually suitably impressed that NUP has substantially matured and that they did the right thing, and that actually today in the country they would be actually claiming high moral ground on a stand on a fight, one, against corruption, and two, an internal mechanisms to deal with issues and challenges of discipline and or indiscipline. Only then to learn much later that Mr. MPUUGA has written, taken a position, which took me quite some time not to know. My earlier assumption was that that meeting, the spirit of that meeting was consistent with that of MPUUGA's, and if MPUUGA was not in that meeting, he was substantially informed, so that by the time the statement was being issued, it was a harmonious party position. Because, as it were, you realize that the manner in which they did it is actually the way it should happen in civil organizations, that we ask you to resign rather than you being sacked, or you being asked to resign, something like that. And these are semantics, but extremely important in management and running of big organizations. So from that point of view, I was actually giving NUP the credit, which by and large I still do. Except then, of course, then the new argument is MPUUGA to be faulted? MPUUGA is to be faulted. For me, who represents a political party that's ideologically driven, issues driven, a political party that believes in the many, not the few, the majority of our people rather than the privileged, I would say that if any of our leaders was in that position, even if it was a collective decision, I would expect a UPC leader to feel uncomfortable and then to either take a position and defend, not wasting huge amount of public money, or to go back to his colleagues and simply say, this is what's going on. It would appear that it was not. And so for that reason, he's substantially faltered. Now, of course, the argument now is that MPUUGA is being...
You're saying the moment the matter was raised in the Parliamentary Commission, MPUUGA should have gone back to his political party.
Indeed, and as a political party, particularly if you're a member of Parliament representing a political party and you're there representing not as an independent.
Okay.
That is why you have party whips, and party whips are really to mainstream people. But for me, who has had the privilege of interviewing people to go into political positions where the councillors, and indeed to engage with people who would otherwise be members of Parliament in established democracies, one of the first questions, if you want to stand as a candidate for UPC in Kiradongo, my first test for you would be loyalty to the party, to your work, in communities that would be consistent with our values. And three, which is actually most importantly, your ability, your emotional maturity. Should you have a conflicting position which would otherwise compel you to break the whip of the party. Those are key things, and those are key strengths of leadership. that what it tells you is where political parties and organizations are in this country today, that many of us are going to politics really without being sufficiently rich. But you can't possibly blame MPUUGA. It is the culture, it's the system. If you look at the listing of the entire thing, I think somebody was saying during break that in that listing, it turns out that 3 key people conveniently became absent in the decision-making process. That happens because the public need to know, because they may not be having access to these minutes, that the people who were supposed to have been there, who are members of this committee, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, and the Deputy Speaker. Granted, the Speaker chaired that meeting. Now you ask yourself, what is our politics? Is it politics of mafia? Is it politics of extortion? And as Perry said, huge amount of money going to a small group of individuals in this country. Do you know what happened? The recent report about my beautiful sister Nita's allowances, in other countries, it would call for resignation. And if you come from Anita's statement, and then you
allegedly,
I think it has been confirmed. I think it has been confirmed as factually true, as it were. I would withdraw if it was not, but almost certainly the case. And then you bring in this money for commissioners, and the money in which it is presented, one of, and you look through the minutes, and you see it's almost like a laissez-faire conversation that you guys, let's have a seat, and then my son has got to go to Leeds University, and I don't know how I'm going to get to the other one. So maybe how should we sort out ourselves? Let's do it. You know what? This country seems to be substantially ripe for a revolution, a people's revolution, where citizens of this country, particularly the ordinary working classes that Stephen introduced with, simply say, no, enough is enough. The dubious class that ironically is represented by NRA, which is allegedly claiming to be a revolutionary political organization. Revolutionary political organizations should be organizations that normally are about the peasantry and the marginalized in society, and people who radically want to change the manner in which society is run and governed, and focusing on the resources of the people, like the Bulisa oils, to be shared equitably and particularly to the areas of need. There would be a major revolution in this country. But I hope that revolution will happen, and that revolution will happen through the mainstream of political parties, and I hope UPC will lead that revolution.
Right. Honorable Mukitali, you've been a member of parliament, and probably you understand the workings of that institution and how the Parliamentary Commission works. In his statement, Honorable MPUUGA says this decision was legally taken. It fits within the parliamentary process, but the political party he belongs to continues to say that it's unacceptable. He should quit and then be rehabilitated. What is your take?
I've been listening in, and throughout my career, I don't answer questionnaires of yes and no. Whatever professors I've got from those universities, whenever they came to me with yes and no, I always tell them I don't respond. Now, first of all, having listened to my good submission from my fellow panelists, number one is that 2024-2025 is a campaign year. The results will be announced in 2026. The election is a process, it's not an event. So what we are seeing is just the manifestations of what the kind of election we are about to have. My position is very clear. I don't think we are in a true multi-party pluralism.
Of course not.
That is my position, very considered position, and that's why I'm a strong advocate of national dialogue, comprehensive constitutional review commission, truth-telling, reducing the powers of the president, and if possible make parliament stronger, have regional governments, and the budget. The budget should go to citizens, not just to where it is going today. Now, if we had that debate, it could be a healthy debate for me to indulge. The word I used when I refused to indulge in the age limit, I said I will not indulge.
You missed out. You lost out. Huge amount of money.
So you do not want to comment on this issue. So we can move on.
No, let me first start with you see, if we had really parties, Dr. Sarah has alluded to this, we would be seeing parties having research departments, cadre placement. By the time you go for a primary election, you already know in this region who speaks for us, who represents our ideology, who relates with the people, who is relevant to the community.
Honorable Mkitale, we are discussing the issue of no. Can we try to be systematic here?
No. There is the issue of the NRM also here.
We will come to the NRM. Let's deal with the issue of no first. As a proponent of national dialogue, is the National Unity Platform handling its affairs in a good way? You also talk about political parties.
Now you are taking me to a yes or no questionnaire, which
you can respond and give your results.
Let me say this. In Parliament, I thank God I never indulged in discussing remuneration. For my 15 years in Parliament, it was always the Commission, and the Commission, by the way, includes the Prime Minister, includes the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, the Minister of Finance, and of course the Constitutional Minister of Finance is the President. But every time we are being accused of giving ourselves higher pay, I never intended, I would even be allergic to discuss that. Because first of all, I did not expect to go to Parliament for remuneration. My thinking is a parliamentarian should be facilitated, should be voluntary work, should be service.
But you see,
So
somebody
in the first place, I don't agree with what is happening.
Somebody out there is going to say each time they increase the money, you took it. You didn't reject it.
I'm just telling
that's the discussion we're having now.
I'm just informing these fellow countrymen what happens. That a lot of these MPs, the 500 something, will never discuss this subject matter. It is a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy of both government and opposition. Possibly because they want something to go through, possibly they want to make them happy today. And I don't condone.
So let's look at this 500
so the point I'm making, first of all, is that, and I also want to agree with Perry's position, that I don't know how we have rushed into merging institutions and forgotten the bigger thing. We did make a report in Parliament, I think 10 years ago. No more salary enhancements until we have a salary review commission. That was put in place. But I see people now jumping on merging, but they have forgotten the bigger issues. So I see more appointments of presidential advisors with 70 million, 50 million. So it's a whole circus, a whole confusion, and it's not proper. I think we are really, it's a circus to the taxpayers, the citizens. I think we are taking them as if it's not their country. Now, MPUUGA, I already told you we are in campaigns. MPUUGA comes from MPUUGA was DP yesterday. MPUUGA is less than 3 years of NUP. MPUUGA represents other constituencies, including Uganda. MPUUGA, I said this before when he was being replaced by Joel Senyonyi. MPUUGA also speaks for the Catholic Church. I mentioned this at that time. So, MPUUGA is not alone. MPUUGA came to NUP with a group of other politicians. So, since the campaign period has come, people are posturing. Do they still need the umbrella and the red coffee for the next election? Or they can rebrand themselves and come back as a rebranded DP, as a rebranded SUV? Because me, that's what I even expected before this debate. I think this commission money thing is just a spark. It's just a spark. These guys, if you check with the numbers, if you check with the Sogoners, you will find that there is some movement. There is some undercurrent in there. That's why even some people were saying MPUUGA should not have been replaced as a leader of opposition. So, aware of that, for me as a fisherman, I don't want to go by the just seeing what's on top of the lake. I'm more interested in the tide and the current under the lake, because that's what exactly what will actually explain what's happening now. The challenge we are having is that we are going into an election, as I've said, unfortunately, without discussing the most important thing. The Constitutional Review Commission, the electoral reform things. We are just saying another election. So what? So we are jumping into another election. And
Honorable, so the roadmap is unfunded for 8 months now.
So even no, the new kid on the block, nascent as it is, I think they're also learning how to deal with some of these governance issues.
And an update that we are just receiving right now, the leaders of NUP in Masaka have just protested the decision by the party to ask MPUUGA to step aside. They have told the party leader to make sure that he explains these matters to members of the party and also differentiate party matters from the way he runs his home state. That's a statement.
Who are
from
these leaders?
They are councillors from Nyendo Mukungwe in Masaka. That's a constituency where Honorable Matthias MPUUGA comes from.
Talk of the devil and the devil, right?
So we want to ask you, Honorable Mukitale, will this issue probably hurt NUP the way some people are speculating that it's likely maybe to cause a problem and distort their base here in the central region?
The position I was making as student of system analysis is garbage in, garbage out. Today's young people in ICT are using it so much in the computer. All these are symptoms of non-functionality of the political parties. That the political system does not give the political players an ideal environment to interest articulate, to interest aggregate, to have a grassroots structure, to, they don't have it. So we are against all odds. They are trying to move against the current, and that's what we are seeing. That's what you can actually see. So for me, clearly, NUP cannot perform better than what it is doing. We may actually see more presidential candidates than what we sought
from the
even from the opposition. But can I also discuss because I had wanted to move on the NRM side?
We are going to come to the NRM side, but let's close it down. Sarah, you wanted to jump in. This situation, where does it leave the NUP?
I think for me, I share Perry's view that the matter beforehand, you cannot fault people at the tail end. You have a situation where Parliament, whose budget and the welfare issues are determined by the commissioners. You have a meeting of commissioners. The people who were missing in those commissioners, in that meeting were more or less ex officios. You have the deputy speaker. When the speaker is present, really the absence of the deputy speaker is not an issue. You have the prime minister, but the other commissioners from NRM are present. You have Minister of Finance. According to our current constitutional framework, Parliament is self-accounting and self-budgeting. And those are the issues, are the mistakes that those are the gaps that the Constituent Assembly created.
So we cannot even question where they got the 500 million.
Let me come. Those are the gaps that the Constituent Assembly created in the Constitution in what they thought would create the independence of Parliament. We have not experienced this crisis before because of the nature of the leaders. So we've been thinking Parliament is running normally on the basis of strength and minimized weaknesses of particular individuals. 28 years down the road, we realize a big budget stroke abuse crisis in Parliament. So unless we amend that constitution to take away the issue of self-budgeting and self-accounting, we shall keep dealing with symptoms as to how Parliament spends its money.
You raised an issue there where you say that this is the first time we are having it. And in the ideal situation, you would want to have a self-accounting Parliament and an independent Parliament as such. And those are
the framers thought they were enforcing the independence.
So is it about the law or it's about the individuals? Perry.
You see, the US has a similar system to ours in terms of how Congress and the Senate allocate their money. The only thing is the president has to sign that bill whenever they the bill that they present, for their increment.
For checks and balances.
Exactly, for checks and balances.
Now there are no checks and balances
they cannot,
to the budgeting of Parliament.
There is actually checks and balances. That's why you have a prime minister in that
No.
commission
No.
and the minister of finance
No,
who
those are
directly
not checks and
who
balances.
directly represent
Let me
the
ask
executive,
you.
the
Let
president.
me ask you. In this budget cycle we are concluding, we have been looking for a breakdown of Parliament expenditures. 9 months down the road, we've not seen a copy. Everybody you ask for a copy of a breakdown of budget expenditures runs away under this leadership of Honorable Anita Monk.
and that's why I was
Yes, ma'am.
really emphasizing the importance of having a clear provision in the constitution. Because in Kenya, you just Google, you will find how much their salaries, their allowances, it's public information. And you know why they did that? Because before they amended their constitution, their situation was like ours. And in 2012, they had a very big demonstration because MPs then increased their salaries when the public servants were going to hell and back in terms of the cost of living and getting meager pay. So to cure that, they then included a provision in their constitution. It's actually included in Article 230, Clause 4 of their constitution.
Joseph.
I mean, just to reemphasize really, because the two sisters have emphatically made the point, what I was saying at the beginning, that after all this time, that we don't have provisions for national pay scales is extraordinary. And then number two, Mr. Museveni comes and says, oh, science teachers, oh, arts teachers. And we have a laissez-faire conversation, and and tomorrow people begin and move on.
We have
all this time we need
budgeting.
So in other words, we need a national pay review commission that deals with and handles pay, one, in public organizations, and two, including the provision that some of us are pushing for, these living wage provisions. So meaning therefore that even public organization, you cannot be a Pineti, a dubious Pineti, even if you come with the dubious trillions in Kampala, and then you go ahead and think that you're going to determine how much lowest you're going to pay or necessarily how much highest you pay. This is what happens around the globe. They're absolutely common sense. But do you know what? These guys who came from the bush, they did not come with gold. They came with what?
Yes, and Kenneth, if I may conclude
very quickly.
So a decision taken by a commission of Parliament cannot be punished on an individual. I wish citizens could drag the whole leadership of Parliament to court in public interest, but you cannot punish a group decision of an institution on an individual. Did he create it? Did he make it alone?
I think the only point where I would where I really agree with Joseph is that at times you as the individual, you have to question, is this the right thing to do? And going back to consult,
that's why
may
I was
have
putting it to
helped
Sarah.
him. But in terms of legally, really,
That's morality.
yes,
not
but now your morality.
Morality,
Exactly. Now morality, I would agree with
morality
Joseph.
in line with the party code of
Yes,
conduct.
but the leaders are supposed to go back and inform the party
expectations, yes.
of what is happening in Parliament. That's why you can fault MPUUGA.
Bearing in mind the context of the country, that teachers are crying, doctors have had demonstration, then tons have been, in fact, up to now, I don't know whether they have even got their remuneration increased, even when there were directives. So you look at the context and you wonder, are these guys listening to what the ordinary citizen is saying?
The ordinary citizen of this country is alone.
International dialogue, one of our first ethos and values, the issues of ethics and integrity is one area we need to revisit. Moral armament in this country is long overdue. Even for me initially, when I first heard of this online exhibition and my good friend MPUUGA, it looked like it was more of a trap. And I started questioning that, why don't you cast the net wide to catch everybody?
Everybody who made that
Because
decision.
Parliament does not only, first of all, for those who take this particular decision, but there is a lot of expenditures, including trips. If you took the last 7 years and you checked on the trips abroad, you will be surprised to find members of Parliament who have 3 passports, one for US and related, one for Asia, and one for, Europe and that kind of thing. Because somebody, while he still has on 10 days in China, he has another trip in, and this money is being released. So I would like to urge those who want to do the online exhibition to really do it this guy of Porthole is called who? This artist who makes the Spire. Let them do it the Spire way. Cast the net wider.
But it is Spire who is actually doing this.
That's
exhibition
when we shall understand that you're not targeting an
It should
individual.
be the whole commission.
Yes.
Actually,
For this one, the whole commission is culpable.
the exhibition
The
is
intention of the commission is culpable.
the exhibition- the
Did you
exhibition-
even report to the plenary that there was an intention to reward those commissioners? Meaning, even my NRM, as Honorable Sirwanya and my sister, would also
for your
be
chan.
Sorry.
would also be in problems if the NRM chairman had not,
They should be.
had not given them another term.
Which people?
The NRM commissioners had an extension.
They had an extension.
Yes, if they
which
had
is also
the
being
office,
questioned, which is
they
even
would
being
have
questioned.
earned the money.
Which
But-
that decision to retain them is actually being questioned,
because
and it's a subject of discussion with the
among
Central Executive
complaints
Committee.
by the people who are petitioning the SEC is one of the areas, because ideally the commissioners are supposed to be served 2.5 years. Remember, the old debate in NRM was that we should elect our own commissioners. Before we did, I think the last one was Justin Lumumba and the Dombo Emmanuel's team. Since then, when the parties are designating chairperson, also the issue of the commissioner is now designated. So now, from designation, we are now having second term.
For commissioners.
It's quite an interesting debate at that level. But for me, I want to take this debate slightly wider. The kind of political parties we want. The role of Parliament vis-a-vis the city. Aware that Parliament is responsible for the appropriation. Appropriation should be in the interest of the citizens. At this point in time, when we have challenges of the public goods, when a lot of people cannot afford even examination fees, school fees, where we have challenges in hospitals. So really, it is an indictment to the relevancy of the political class, to the taxpayer, to the voters, and to the citizen. So I think the legitimacy of those who want to be in power is really in question. And I wish the debate would take that line than just this vindictive, which seemingly vindictive MPUUGA target. Yes, MPUUGA is my personal friend. I don't want to.
That's why you were saying.
I don't want to be so much on his defense, because yes, morally he would have said, if his conscience was not clear, he would say, "I reject the money." People have rejected the money before. All right, but we don't want also Noop to do things for the gallery.
All right.
I wish we would do this to strengthen the institution of Parliament, to strengthen the code of conduct.
It's
of
that
political
time of that
parties.
break. Let's go for a break now. When we return, we will hear from the listener, and then you'll respond to some of the comments that they're putting across. We'll wind up this discussion and then move on to the NRM and also the issue of the Lubowa Super Specialized Hospital. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra continues after this break.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90. It's that time when we sample the views of the listener on this particular topic and then get responses from the panelists before we actually move on to the next topic. We have a comment coming in from Sharif, who says, "Good evening, Mr. Lukwaga and the team. As long as MPUUGA was receiving salary, there was nothing to be appreciated for at the expense of the taxpayer. The business of paying public servants similar monies after they retire must also stop." Then we have another comment from Charles Odeke, who is listening in from Nairobi. Thank you very much for following the discussion, Mr. Odeke. He said, "The fact that the money was collected without the reason of getting it, it's clear understanding of the motive. It's payment for submissiveness to the regime and why him. not other leaders of other opposition leaders. It means he helped them and he joined them to eat together. NUP is right and should observe it without compromise. Then we have another comment. Kenneth, I'm disappointed none of the ladies is condemning MPUUGA's Corruption Act. They are hiding behind the process. If it was someone from NRM, they would be spitting fire. Then somebody here actually says, considering what happened to FDC recently, considering what happened to FDC recently, NUP is finished. Somebody once said that there will be no opposition in Uganda by the year 2025. It was a well-calculated move, and the architecture are now they are now celebrating. Then we have another comment. I totally agree with Mr. Tieno. So what was MPUUGA paid for? What was MPUUGA paid for achieving exactly? But this is the truth. The speaker is the most transactional one this country has had, and she will maximize those benefits for herself and those she agrees with. 2, MPUUGA needed NUP and Bobby in 2021. Now is agreeable to the NRM and may not need Bobby and NUP in 2026. And that is his strategy there. This listener actually says. Very quickly, Joseph, you are ready to go before we went for a break, but if you can respond to some of these comments.
Just very quickly, I just wanted to say earlier that this thing is not really about MPUUGA, and nor is it about MPUUGA and NUP. It really is quite clear, the case that while it is the case that we're using, this is really about what's going on in government and what's going particularly in the National Assembly. And in any case, actually, particularly if you look through the minutes that, as I said, I referred to earlier, it shows the manner, the laissez-faire manner in which this thing was, the business was being conducted. And it was quite clearly almost like a mafia-like operation on public monies. So really, actually, the first person who shared this meeting is Anita Mong, the speaker. So Anita Mong should be on the spot. NRA whips should be on the spot. All the other commissioners should be on the spot. Each and every member mentioned in that commission should be on the spot. And so should and must the party leaders of the respective political organizations. It's a huge amount of money that is going to a few individuals. And like Perry said, if you look at the experiences, ordinary people, in fact, the last 5 days I've been nearly absent in and out of Kampala, in some of the cases, sometimes dealing with people who are terribly, in many cases, terminally ill and without access to the very basic of services. I have, on this, while I'm here, I have actually had a request from a family member, a distant family member, asking for less than 10,000 Uganda shillings. They're stranded somewhere in the countryside. You know what? It's about a very basic provision related to their health. We can't continue doing these things like this as if it's business as usual. So really, I know during break, I think we're having other conversations, including about how monies are transacted between Parliament, Museveni's office, and back and things. Legislators listening, my colleagues in parliamentary colleagues, some of whom are our friends, you know what is going on. It is shameful. That's why I said at the introduction, do you know what? This country is 100% ripe for a revolution. What form it takes, let it not be bloody, but this country is substantially ripe for a revolution. The guys who is on the spot must be Mr. Museveni, and in this case, the guys who are on the spot must be the leaders on the National Assembly. Granted, Anita was chairing that meeting. Granted, what is Nambanja's view on these things? Granted, what about the other guy who received iron sheets miraculously, Kasaija, who's actually the Minister of Finance? Granted, why aren't we asking and challenging these people? We must do so.
All right. Perry, your views and probably some response to some of these comments that are coming.
When we are responding to these issues, it's important to look at a holistic view. And that's why we have responded the way we have, that there are gaps in our laws, especially the Constitution, because we would not be having this problem. The other thing that I have seen some countries do is they have what they call a corruption risk assessment for every bill that is going to be passed. They try and ensure that all the gaps that would lead to corruption are addressed before the law is passed. Now that acts as a check, and I think for me, lastly, we must have more transparency in Parliament. We can do that by having that corruption assessment for every bill, having citizens being more vocal on these issues, and we are going into an election. If you are not happy with the way the things are being done, vote them out, because that is one of your roles. And maybe that will act as a check for the future. Those who will come on board to say, you know what, we need to clean house. And maybe just one thing. I was at a function where the president was when the late Cecilia Ogwal passed away at Parliament, and he was on record saying he knows that those committees actually get money, bribes to be able to either pass things. He was on record. My question is, when you are privy to those things
and you're
the head of state, what do we expect?
That's why I
action.
call him the number one suspect. He's the number one suspect in these matters.
To be private information during term limits, he officially bribed them to lift
So
term
the thing
limits.
is,
During age limit, there's something.
The MPs were just facilitated. Let's hear from Honorable Mkitale. Honorable Mkitale, your response to some of these comments before we actually move on.
Stephen's poor colleagues.
Citizens are very disappointed. I have always been warning that we don't want the citizens to give up on us. The legitimacy and relevance of the elected leaders, when you people start questioning, because clearly my concern has been that the parliament, my NRM government, the elected government should be having a pro-poor budget, pro-people budget. You know, something has happened that one can come from nowhere. I'm a son of a teacher, I'm in education sector. A grade 3 teacher becomes an MP and all of a sudden he becomes a very rich man. How did this happen in this country? That one becomes an MP, one becomes a chairman 5, and all of a sudden becomes rich. That means clearly you don't even need a lifestyle audit of the IGG. So it has now become, it's fashionable that somebody from nowhere, somebody who has never had 10 million in his account, I've seen it in Ulisa. I used to have people who had never seen 10 million in their accounts. I know them, they are my relatives.
Why are you talking
But
of 10 million?
They
Speak
come,
of 1
they
million.
come with 1.5 billion in a campaign. So this kind of financing, it's also something to do with election financing. Because these guys are funded by mafiosos. And while in office, they must pay the mafiosos. So the deals for the mafiosos will. So for us, as we may discuss the MPUUGA's 500 million, the problem is bigger.
Yeah.
So people are coming to parliament, to political offices, sponsored by non-national interest. I'm even surprised that we can make a law against homosexuals can fund people.
I told you so.
Al-Shabaabs can fund people. Terrorists can fund people. Guys who are taking government property are funding people. You know, and that's very dangerous. So it's no longer an area of volunteers. And until we make it a voluntary service, until we make it servant leadership, that you go. You know, some of us, we went to parliament thinking we had something. But people have come with nothing and they have everything, and you don't see their exports, you don't see their imports, you don't see their goods.
Their deals. Politics is the biggest business.
So we can. So the point I'm advancing is that we cannot make politics the biggest enterprise. That's where the risk is. No wonder you will even hear some of these entities we are supposed to merge will not be merged, because if an entity gives 100 million to every MP, who will stand there to say? What is the source of her money?
All right,
that's the problem.
Gentlemen and ladies, let's move on now. Dr. Sarah Birete, let's jump into the NRM. You had a say about it a little bit, and you said probably as a party that has been in power for quite so long, they should be more organized. But at least they have taken a step. Are you hopeful that this time around they are going to go into the next election as a unified vehicle, especially when they are handling their primaries with a register that has already been verified and in digital form? How does this help the party?
When NRM says they have 11.4 million,
11.8 million
before they update, meaning that when they update, because the majority of our citizens are aged between 16 and 18, so you have actually the biggest bulk of Ugandans are aged between 13 to 16, and these are people who are now new voters after 5 years. So if you say that before you update you have 11.4 million, so we are likely to see a situation where NRM has more members than registered voters.
Mm.
So we needed to know. We needed to know what age are they registering. Are they registering children? Because we are going to compare NRM membership with the National Voters Register. They are already competing in numbers. So if the National Voters Register is about 17, 18 million, and you have a party saying, before I update the bulk of young people that have just become voters, I have 11.4, meaning that they are likely to come out with 20 million members. Are they registering children? What age group are they registering? 2, when you look at the behavior of NRM youth, some of them launched a big yellow thing at the party.
YYM.
Yes, at the party headquarters. The others filled Kororo at the launch of Perao. I hope they were served also the meal after that, because usually it's about eating. So we are likely to see a repeat of NRM poor youth, NRM rich youth, NRM urban youth, NRM rural youth,
NRM
and
Pilau.
NRM what? They are all conduits for making money. Like Honorable Mkhitaryan has said, the politics is the biggest enterprise. But I think it's the biggest, it's the grand money laundering scheme in this country. Because most of this is like Parliament now is engaged in money laundering. How do you? Because it is important for the viewers to recall that there was an illegal pay of money to MPs in December as a Christmas gift
Oh, yeah.
by the institution of Parliament.
I'd forgotten that.
They passed supplementary budgets and 2 loan requests together. Because I think in that supplementary budget, the loan requests were going into 7.7 trillion. It almost took our loan portfolio to 100 trillion. So after passing that money, apparently about 65 billion came back to Parliament from State House, and the State House had the biggest chunk of classified expenditure. So that classified expenditure apparently is money laundering between the State House and Parliament. And this money was paid as a Christmas gift by the institution of Parliament. The other half of this money that was not paid is allegedly waiting to buy people over this rationalization of agencies. This is money laundering.
There's a comment coming to you directly from John in Chanja, who says, Kenneth, is that our usual Dr. Sarah Birete? If the Parliamentary Commission passes a payment to Sarah Birete of shillings 100 million for being one of the best human rights advocates, will she not accept it? That's a comment there from this listener.
But you see, it's a moral question.
It's a moral
What
question.
what the people are failing to understand is distinguishing between moral and legal.
All right. Let's hear from Perry on the NRM.
You know, I observed the primaries of the NRM in 2021.
You're the best person to tell us
It was a
what
circus
was going.
because people came to the polling station hoping to vote using a register. Then they were told, no, you don't need a register. Everyone can line
As
up
long as
and
you have a
vote.
national
Exactly.
ID.
So, on a positive note, I'm hoping that having this register will then present them the opportunity to conduct an election which is sane. Because that was one of the most insane elections I had observed over the years. So for me, positive, I always want to see the positive in a situation, is that hopefully, because the register is very important in any election, and that's why for countries which have managed to hold free and fair elections, they pay a lot of attention to the register, ensuring that those who should actually be on it are on it, those who should not are weeded out. Now, the thing is there a law supporting this process? Because usually you use the law to support a process of developing the register, cleaning it, and things like that. If I was to advise, it would be important for them to share those guidelines with their supporters, to say these are the guidelines, this is how we are going to do our registration. You know, for a political party that works, it's an important process. You know, so for me, that's really my hope, to say, okay, at least they have taken a positive step. I'm hoping they do it well so that they don't repeat the circus of 2021 as they attempt to hold an election that has a semblance of being fair and free.
Honorable Mkhitaryan, member of the NRM.
I am the NRM flag bearer for Bulisa.
For Bulisa.
In Parliament.
Closer to the mic.
I have been a flag bearer 3 times. but the one time I came as an independent because of a lot of confusion in the primaries, a lot of intrigue.
When was that, when you became an independent?
When I came for the third term in Parliament, I was an independent MP.
Third term?
Yes.
Okay.
In my third term. But this time, I'm still the flag bearer. But one thing I want to thank my Secretary General and his team. In 2016, I made an argument that there is no way this country, any political party should be making its own register when the country had already expended money in the national register. The National Identification Project is intended to give us a national register. So you are supposed to derive any other thing from that national register. So it's just when you become of age, and the national register starts from a child at birth, the birth certificate. So when you have become of age, you automatically have a voting age. But we have been spending a lot of money, sometimes writing yellow books, sometimes doing what. So you find people who are not. So why I'm so happy with Secretary General Todong and his team, the mini number at least can distill all those fake people, because how do you become a voter of a constituency if you don't you don't have a national ID? So I think that will solve the problem which Perry has said. People just you come and do what? And vote.
But this is a register for a political party. Probably you'll be issued a membership card.
You even check in the US and all those other countries. The national register matters first. You derive, in statistics, you derive all these others. If you want a national a team number,
and that's what they are going to do.
Passport.
They are going to register
there
members.
must be reference.
They are going to register members with their names.
Yes.
And
I'm
therefore
saying,
it will be
I'm
connected.
saying that's a good thing. I'm saying that's a good thing. But I had made a point earlier that our political parties, including the NRM, we don't do what we're supposed to do first. In NRM, what we do, we start with, of course, somebody will say that internal democracy is more important than cadre placement. But for a serious political party, you have a research desk. You know who is who. You know how do we even end up with people who are not qualified? The party, the president used in his own language says that his father's house has a lot of room. Everybody can fit somewhere. Then if you know
where is that?
Some NRM mobilizer does not have S6. Why do you waste taxpayers' money and voters? You cause intrigue in voters. You know, people have been coming 4 times, standing without qualification. We used to go to the High Court. You go to the Court of Appeal. At that time, we're even going to the what? To the highest.
The Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. At least now you stop at the Court of Appeal, and yet you know that this person does not qualify, but you still tender that person to stand in the party. So that clearly shows the party has no research department. The party does not do cadre placement, because you may know this person is a very good mobilizer in the party. Can you be a mobilizer? Then this one comes as a member of parliament. Another one comes as an LC5. So that we don't have this case where people first lose the primaries after a lot of self-destruction and intrigue. Then you're trying to reorganize people much later. So it's very expensive. It divides the party. And people said in 2016, if this former senior Mama Mbabas was serious, he would pick the annoyed losers of primaries, fund them, and they would become another Pilau, like for those who are saying 2026, Pilau could be the leader of opposition. So we really need to invest heavily in making sure
non-government organization.
you wait.
It's a civic company limited by guarantee. It's an NGO.
You wait. We shall tell that by 2026. If it doesn't produce 100 MPs.
All right.
Now that I can see MPUUGA is being chased with his team from NUP. NUP may not be the next leader of opposition in parliament.
Well, there is no direct information indicating that MPUUGA is being chased. The party has actually said They want him to return the money where he got it from, apologize, resign and then he will be rehabilitated.
What kind of thick skin do you expect this human being to be? That you are humiliating him, you are embarrassing him. What is he looking for?
All right, let's hear from Joseph.
MPUUGA was lending credibility to Nook by being there.
Joseph, at the launch of the process actually to update the register, one of the things NRM chairman Yoweri Kaguta Museveni talked about, even touch your leaders in the UPC. First, at that point he was talking about the likelihood of the opposition infiltrating the NRM register and then causing challenges, and then he was warning the party about how to handle people who would want to cross at last minute to join the NRM party. One, he talked about Bobby Wine, talked about the Honorable Jimmy Akena, and then talked about the Honorable Betty Amongi. And he actually said for Betty Amongi and Honorable Jimmy Akena, he can actually escort them if they chose to join the party at the last minute and convince the party that indeed they are friends of the NRM.
To correct you, you need to be fair to Chagulanyi and NUP. He didn't refer to Chagulanyi and NUP. I think he referred to
He referred to Chagulanyi. He asked a question and said, what if Bobby Wine comes today and says, I have decided to join the party? What do we do?
Oh, I see. Part of the clip that I saw, linking to Jimmy was my good brother Norbert Mao, whom I must congratulate for his
it was Mao, Jimmy Akena, and Honorable Betty Amongi.
Yes. So he was saying that, well, Jimmy and Betty.
Let's not discuss the individuals. Let's discuss that issue guarding the NRM from being infiltrated by the opposition.
I welcome to have their names in the NRM register. And that was rather cheeky.
There's no NRA register. We are looking at the NRM.
No, it is. Oh no, it's
NRM.
No, it's NRA.
NRM, National Resistance Movement Organization,
led by the National Resistance Army and its high command,
led by the chairman of that party, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni,
who's the man always on combat. But anyway, look, the issue of electoral registers are very important. Partly, as Stephen says,
just to tell you that combat has UPDF on it. Anyway, let's continue.
The name that was given together with the 1995 NRA Constitution, which has been broken every time this conveniently disorganizes the chairman, who is the man in charge from Kabamba. But anyway, look, no, political parties need to have functioning registers, and as Perry suggests, these registers should be registers of members who've joined the party knowingly, willingly, and in many cases paid their membership dues and subscriptions, know the core aims and objectives of the political parties and organizations in questions, but also know their obligations as party members. And those members are extremely important. They know that they've got the rights to vote, and who votes for who votes generally, who participates in the branch elections, who participates in the constituency elections, who is able to vote for local council 1, 2, 3 councillor candidates, and who participates in elections for members of parliament, and then possibly people who go to the delegates conferences. This really is part of the broader training thing. Now, so as a matter of common sense, all political parties need to have this, and those lists need to be tight. How it is, and I know we are discussing NRA, how it is in other political parties I don't want to know. Again, I will always keep on referring to some of my own many privileges in both the UPC and in the Labour Party in which I held these lists. It's extremely important. When your membership is 1 week to elapsing, meaning you did not pay your subscription for the other year, you will get a notification. And if it hits midnight before that day, the following morning, you cannot participate in certain processes because technically your membership has deferred. And if you're going, say, for an general meeting, the list up to date, which includes membership as of that morning or last night, you will not be allowed to enter. That is how it should happen. And I hope that when the NRA guys begin to do it, they'll do it the manner in which it should happen. In UPC, a future UPC that I will be leading, that is exactly what it should what it should be like. But I think we are discussing the lists without saying that actually we are moving towards elections. that it's not surprising that you're linking PLU, is it PLU? the NGO led by
Patriotic League,
the NGO led by the serving general. Okay, so so quite clearly, we are preparing for a general election, and NRA is really at the front doing this thing. In fact, I rarely give these guys credit. You could actually quite see that these guys are doing the mathematics. They're using our money from parliamentary commission and things like that. But they're basically genuinely preparing themselves. Pilau is quite clearly a fallback position. And Stephen, did you say it on air? That the very likely event that elections do successfully take place, the possibilities of Pilau having no less than possibly 100 legislators in the assembly, and so therefore possibly becoming the official next opposition. What I think is more important about whatever the ongoings in NRA is that NRA as we ever knew it is dead. NRA is no more. NRA at the moment is trying to
Which NRA?
NRM, the organization.
NRM.
The ruling political organization.
If you're going to defeat your enemy, you actually need to understand them better. So
I know them.
You better refer to
remember.
NRM.
Have you ever read what Paul Mwanga said of Museveni? And he was my vice president. So I know these guys. I know these guys better than most people serving in their regime. But look, I think NRA is preparing to relaunch itself, is preparing to rebrand itself. In the likely event that time comes for Mr. Museveni to be no longer, the fallback position for its members is such that there is something relatively new and is there for pilau, is rice and those kind of stuff. And it's nicer than, for example, say NUP, things like that. That really is what's going on at the moment.
Joseph, let's
now,
go for
it is happening
now.
at the heart of Ugandans, and people are not watching and paying sufficient attention to it.
Let's go for a break now. When we return, we'll see if we have some comments on this particular subject coming in from the listeners, and also we shift our gears to the Lubowa Super Specialized Hospital Project. Stay tuned. Radio 1 FM 90 Spectrum Extra continues after these messages.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, which is coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week. My guest on this panel, Ms. Perry Aritua, Executive Director, Women Democracy Network, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, member of the Uganda People's Congress, Dr. Sarah Birete, Executive Director at the Center for Constitutional Governance, Honorable Stephen Muktari-Rawa, economist, political scientist, immediate former Blissa County MP. Your host, Kenneth Lukwago-Anderson, here moderating the show. Dr. Sarah Birete, Lubowa Super Specialized Hospital, supposed to begin in 2019, was a project that was supposed to be delivered in 2 years. Up to now, we're still asking questions. What's going on?
Since 2018.
2018.
Well, Lubowa was introduced in 2018, and the first agreement included a request for government to guarantee a private developer to borrow money, construct a hospital in 2 years, use it for a space of 4 to 5 years, and hand it over to government because it will be built on free land. The land in question is what is in Lubowa. After 5 years, it's surrounded by iron sheets of color blue. And I think somebody took a drone picture, which was published in the Nile Post. That drone picture showed two structures, one with a blue roof, another one with a green roof. They look like the old classroom in my village church school, primary school. They look like those classrooms of old church primary schools. You have lost steam, Dr. Sarah Birete. I'm just wondering why. No, because it is very frustrating to be discussing a 590 billion money scam, money haste by the topmost technocrats in this country. When the same character of Lubowa interfered in coffee, the president said, and he made a quotation that those who are looking for Pineti, I am here, come for me. So I don't know whether he was saying he's the Pineti. But I am just quoting him verbatim. So
there's a famous clip of one of the MPs from Nakaseke. What is his name again? Lutamaguzi, where he actually says we have a black Pineti.
Yeah, it's not far from the truth. So the president said, those who are looking for Pineti, I am here, come for me. Pineti made an attempt to go and explain her case in the recent concluded NRM caucus retreat in Changwanzi. She ran out looking for security, having failed to convince the NRM cadres of her agenda in this country. I'm sure every citizen, wherever they are wondering what this woman is doing in this country. Why can't she leave? She attempted to take the best coffee, level 18. It failed. I saw her recently in my district to intervene in the coffee factory, Igara coffee factory. I hope really my district won't be grabbed like that. Now, the hospital, and shamelessly, Parliament approves a budget every year of 2.7 billion to the Ministry of Health to supervise the Rubawa Hospital. Can they tell us what they've been supervising for 5 years? The 2 camera incidences we've seen, a team of MPs and the Ministry of Health last year were denied entry in that site. Just last week,
before you get to a site, you need to get permission.
From who?
From the people who are managing that site.
I will come to that. Last week, the leader of opposition with his team was denied access. But I also heard that when the leader of opposition sometimes is going to do oversight work with his team, they are denied transport by a clerk of parliament. A lot of fraudulent issues are happening. Clerk of parliament, the leadership of parliament. I wish people could take them on in a public interest litigation case. They deny leader of opposition transport to do his work, as if that is their personal property. So when it comes to Rubawa, you have a site guarded by the police and the army. And not very far from this, we had an elder assassinated and citizens chasing the assassins with their bare hands. 3 kilometers with no trace of police and army. But police and army is guarding a site in Rubawa and grass and maybe snakes inside that bush area. Can they explain what they are doing there?
All right, let's hear from Perry. Perry, your take on this issue of Rubawa super specialized hospital. The investor, Pineti, was supposed to build, operate, and transfer. After 10 years, it becomes a national asset, and the strategy was to eliminate the huge amount of money that we keep on taking abroad for referrals, because this hospital would provide all the services needed that keep on taking Ugandans abroad.
Good intention, bad execution. That is, in a nutshell, what it is, because the intention, from what you've said, was good, but the execution is not different from the failure of this country to manage public resources. And you see, for me, when the story came up, I kept thinking, why should an ordinary citizen be even motivated to pay taxes? Because remember, this is taxpayers' money you're talking about. So if URA is going around and encouraging people to pay taxes, the job of appropriation, once it is done by Parliament, the next step is to see value for money. Now, if year in, year out, we are not seeing value for money, why would you blame a taxpayer who does not want to pay taxes? And you see, for me, that is it's, you know, we're between a rock and a hard place. Pay your tax, but I'm not seeing value for money. And maybe just from a legal perspective, the MPs were right to go and do their checks to find out how this money is being used, because that's within their constitutional mandate. They are our eyes. They're supposed to be our eyes and ears as citizens, because we give them that power. They were doing their constitutional mandate. I think what is sad for me is to even disempower them more, but then expect the taxpayer to continue giving money. That for me is what I find not only disheartening, but I think it is cruel to the Ugandan taxpayer, especially in a country where for ordinary citizens it is not, they can't even think of taking cases which can't be handled by Mulago to Nairobi, because they don't have the means. So I think we have reached
Even if you can manage to come to Murago.
Exactly.
Because there are some bills at the end of the day to be paid.
Yeah, so it's just the lack of care, the disregard for the ordinary person in this country, and you continue saying you're leading this country. For me, that is the sadness for this country.
Honorable Chief.
This country needs a revolution. This country needs a revolution.
Not a national dialogue.
I hope you're not inciting people with the continuous use of that word, revolution. This is like the 5th time.
No, Mr. Museveni will be very delighted that I'm using those words because he claims to be a revolutionary. So what a contradiction that would be. But look, I think why I have to emphasize that is really, as we were saying earlier, that to think that we are still discussing Pineti is considering the controversies around Pineti and considering the amount of...
do we need to apply for orders for her deportation?
Could you imagine? But in fact, we should. And in any case, I was just simply saying that, well, the fact that anybody, including Mr. Museveni, could be engaging with this woman should be made a persona non grata possible in this country, because we generally don't know who she is and what she is, considering the scandals that have been involved with her. But that the citizens continue, and we here have this space to use it to discuss Lubowa without the detail and without holding Mr. Museveni to account and holding all the parties to account is actually extraordinary. But I want to say this quickly, that members of parliament generally, around the world, they are amongst the most revered citizens. So to find that a member of parliament, almost just like diplomats in respective countries, is denied access to a church, is denied access to a shop, is denied access possibly even to an informal party, unless it's a very private party. But in this case, they're carrying out their work, and the citizens keep quiet, is extraordinary. This Lubowa, what is so special about it? There was this thing about, is it a hospital in Tanzania? Is it Benjamin Mkapa Hospital? All of us saw those rounds, where this hospital was built at a cost of $60 million. Took hardly 2 years. The thing is complete. What is special about Tanzania? And what is this strange thing about NRA Uganda? What clearly it is it? Ugandans just need to wake up. Ugandans need to wake up. The Namibian president died not so long ago, the former now President Hage Gaibu. SWAPO is my sister party, and NRA will say that SWAPO is also their sister party. When it became apparent that this guy was ill, from a public interest perspective and the manner in which he runs government as an open government, their commitment, as it were, very impressive, he publicly made a statement about his health conditions. When he made it public, he had an invite from a number of universities, one of which included hospitals, one of which included one in America. This guy, before he died, I think 3 weeks, he wrote such an impressive stuff, and I don't know whether some of you guys saw. I saw it through some privileged space, but I think it went into public, where he was telling Namibian people that, look, this is my situation. I told you guys 2 weeks ago I will be flying to America in a week's time, and so the vice president will be in charge. Yeah, but he explained, and in between that, my treatment in the US has been, I was invited by specialists, but of everything else that I'm going through, 95% of my conditions should be treated in Namibia. The only other 5% are the specialist services that these guys think that I might require from a specialist facility. But you guys...
And he said he will use his personal money.
He said he's going to use his personal money, and the state is not going to. And beyond that, including looking after him there. But you know what thing else he said? Is that on my return, those specific facilities that would be treating me, I am going to make sure they're brought back in terms of technology and skills in Namibia. Meaning, coming back as a result of that trip, it will not only add value, but it means that possibly in my situation, there will be no circumstance under which another Namibian, possibly in 6 months or certainly 12 months going forward, will be requiring to travel abroad. That is how things are done. That
so he went for treatment with unfortunately, an idea of benchmarking.
No, unfortunately, he unfortunately, he died weeks before that. But that was that, and this is just the other month. In fact, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago.
All right. Let's hear from Honorable Mkitali. Your take on the Lubowa super specialized hospital, and how it's working. And what advice would you give to Parliament? Parliament, the other day, the Speaker said, Deputy Speaker Thomas Taiba will head a team to go to the site after the leader of opposition had been stopped. But it seems that that mission hasn't happened, and we do not have a report. But we are told there was a meeting where the leader of Parliament was actually summoned to State House and probably told on how to handle Luo.
We forget to condolences to our Tanzanian brothers. Ali Hassan died in Tanzania, and from the president, Madam Lady President, did announce that he died from a government facility.
He died from a government facility. He had just returned from the UK where he had gone for treatment.
For specialized treatment. Of course, this was reminded when we were talking of citizens in Lunguja who chased assassins of Mutaka, head of the Ndiga clan. I am raising this to justify the need for specialized, super specialized medical tourism. We have, I don't want to give a long list of our leaders who have died from abroad, including our diaspora beginning to demonstrate against our senior citizens who go to seek such classified, specialized medical treatment abroad. So the need for medical tourism in Uganda was yesterday, but the problem is how as a country we don't use, there are more than 4 option scenarios, if I can use in literature, repetition can mean emphasis. Alternative option scenarios. I think that's allowed. That SFC has just worked on roads. We have the UPDF engineering brigade. They could do that.
They could build. They did a good job with the terminal at Entebbe.
Let me make my case. Government can even do a classified procurement. I'm a procurement person. And say the Army of Uganda Engineering Brigade will do us a specialized hospital in 2 years. I am sure UPDF Engineering Brigade would have given us value for money than having gone for it. The Minister of Health, my good friend, Dr. Cheng, I know, from the times he was in charge of a facility to become the Director of Medical Services. If Minister of Health was given that budget, would be having an equivalent of a structure. Possibly would be looking for money for equipping and furnishing. In Uganda, we have had, without a single government money, my good friend Dr. Sebale, Case Clinic, Ian Clark, IHK, and the others, if they were given this responsibility as another scenario of procuring this project, I'm sure would be very far by now.
The Aga Khan have it.
The Aga Khan
in 2 years.
They have moved. I think in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
There is steady progress at the Aga Khan site. Really, we know in procurement is what we call proven performance. We know what has worked before. We know those who have exhibited, that level of competence and performance. So why we do try and error?
Maybe the structure was constructed underground.
Why we do the... And by the way, this is also another mistake we make. One of the reasons why we are not attracting the Hiltons and other chain hotels in Uganda, we want to build without looking at the specifications of Hilton. Then tomorrow you say Hilton come. Government can put up the structure. Any other person, the Ugandan engineers can put up the structure. Then you invite. There's nothing wrong for government to invite
specialists to run it.
Specialists to come and work with government to run such a facility. Our earlier proposal was actually at Mulago itself. That land which was to towards Mawanda Road and that area there, we had proposed much earlier as Committee of National Economy when we were getting earlier loans that medical tourism was something to do. But what we had proposed, government puts up a lot of rooms, then these specialized doctors, consultants can come from all over the world to operate within that environment. So the scenarios we know. So why we choose to go for the Pineti approach is scandalous. I don't think anybody, however much you would want to spin for government, however much you'd want to do whitewash, it is irredeemable. You can't win. And we know we had earlier connections like the Linda Chokers, where everything in this government could be done. If the Linda Choker is there, something must be done. So people are telling us
Linda Choker.
the Vatican connection, the Italy connection, the Gaddafi, I don't know, that kind of the Emirates, that cannot help the country. So I think it's unfortunate. We have squandered a very good opportunity. I hope the debate for coffee has reached some conclusion, but the country is already in debt. When you get a sovereign guarantee, you are committing government in terms of borrowing. That's why some of us go slow on PPPs, because we know there is other costs. You know, there are hidden costs which are not made very clear. So
all right, we have comments
clearly, the role of the state has to be reviewed. Is it the state to give us medical tourism? Can we work with our Ugandan diaspora? We have medical consult. When people go to South Africa, when they go to Kenya, they are Ugandan experts. So why don't you give an incentive to these Ugandan experts to come home and give them this kind of, give them the structures? They will bring you the technology, they will bring you the consultants.
All right,
so
comments come again.
Love this country.
Comments come again. Twinamasko Henry writes and said, to put it in proper perspective, the 590 billions already spent on the Invisible Lubowa project can finance 3.5 years budget of district roads, because each district gets 1 billion per year. Okelo Patrick Bonyo listening in from Busega. Lubowa Hospital is just a ghost project. Maybe it was used to reward someone. I blame MPs for their continuous passing of the budget that includes that ghost project. Lubowa, the capture of state institutions is what takes so-called investors like Pineti from Uganda Investment Authority, whose daily job is to vet investors and help them to get started. The moment you take key functions from institutions and take them elsewhere, it is a recipe for chaos. That's a comment from John. Another comment, thanks for the show, Kenneth. I think Mr. Cheno is absolutely right. Under UPC, the late Obote was treated in Mulago while serving as president, and we continue sending top officials abroad for medical treatment, spending a lot of money. Spectrum Extra, your panelists are still wondering what is happening in Uganda. People kill their animal and are enjoying it. But seriously, if Uganda was ripe for a specialized hospital, don't you think genuine investors like Aga Khan would have invested? Ugandans are at their own. Well, gentlemen and ladies, we're coming towards the end of this show, and I'll begin with you, Joseph Ocheno, your parting words, summing up what you discussed today.
Ugandans are quite clearly on their own, and NRA has had enough. They killed the animal, they've chewed it. 38 years is a long time. These guys need to have the humility and examine their conscience. Most of them allegedly are Christians. Most of them allegedly very religious. They should give this country a break. And in this case, particularly for Mr. Museveni, who heads the organization, I think it's possible for him to say that, look, I have done my best, you know, and it's time for me to give a shot to the next generation. And the next generation could easily be maybe even someone in NRA, certainly not from family. And that, you know, such an arrangement would give us, you know, an opportunity to begin to rethink, to re-strategize, to reorganize, to remobilize, and to refocus in terms of our national priorities. It is very possible for us to be able to do that, and all of us doing that, we should be able to do so in such a manner that it's about, you know, bringing us together rather than dividing us.
Honorable Mkitali.
Listening to the president's speech last night, it is possible to transform Uganda, but I think the process must be inclusive. There must be participation. I think Ugandans, different specialties, the academia, the even different region, the cultural institutions, the faith-based, can provide solutions to what this country needs in terms of the rearmament of of this country, in terms of morality, in terms of values, in terms of identifying the key projects this country needs to transform. It should not be a one man's responsibility. I think what the president was even saying last night, that for those areas he has guided, they have seen the success. So we also want to see Bunyoro, we want to see West Nile, we also want to see Lango, we also want to see Teso, Buked, which was once very powerful. It is possible.
No,
but
poor.
in this region, there are powerful people in every region in the country, including my Bazukul Debasoga, whom they say they have Giga. But it was an industrial city of this country. So let us make an effort to make sure that we really have devolved. We make sure that every region can contribute and find homemade solutions, and it is possible to have this country have all these facilities. I wish even this medical budget for the specialized medical facility was pushed in every region.
All right.
We would have a much better facility in my home, my referral, another one in Arua, another one in. I think this project of everything in Uganda being bundled to one powerful person is not. Let's go to our regions and develop our regions.
Dr. Sarah Birete.
I think for me, generally, I will conclude with two comments. One on the use of taxpayers' money. The people in charge of using taxpayers' money or dispensing taxpayers' money, mainly the Ministry of Finance and the Parliament that does appropriation and oversight. Please stop using taxpayers' money as your personal, ATMs. To dispense whenever you want, to please, to appease, to buy support, to buy, crowds. It is too much. The citizens are drowning in poverty as the leaders enjoy in excessive, luxurious manner. The true animal farm. I think we are beyond animal farm. We are beyond animal farm.
All right.
That should end. And the last on Urubowa Hospital. I know there was a case filed in public interest on Urubowa Hospital. But Madam Pinet, wherever you are, please pick your bags and march out of Uganda.
All right, let's hear from Perry.
I think for me, just two things. We need a new consensus. A new consensus as a country. How do we develop this country? We need to rethink the foundational issues, our value system. We just need a clean slate.
This experiment has failed.
Majority of our population is young, and I think the constitution which was written then, for majority, they don't even know it. They don't, So just the value system. How do we do this together? How do we coexist in our differences, but for the betterment of this country?
All right, with that, we come to the end of Spectrum Extra. Thank you very much, my dear panelists, for making time to be with us today and discussing these very important topics. I know they will continue to evolve in the near future, and I will still continue reflecting on them. Thank you very much, dear listeners, for contributing to this show. Your views, as usual, continue shaping the discussion in studio. I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwaganderson, wishing you a very good weekend.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion of the topical issues of the week.